All right, so these types of problems are called consecutive integers. All right, we're going to look at some problems, and on the back here, you guys have a bunch of examples of some word problems that look like these. Okay, so before we start talking about it, we need to understand what the word consecutive means. So consecutive just means that numbers are kind of in a row, right, or in order. So when I look at the pattern here, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, right, what's the next number in the consecutive set? So 1, 2, 3, 4 would be, the next number would be 5, clearly, right? And so these are what we call consecutive integers. Right? Integers just means like whole numbers, okay? So we're putting our whole numbers in order, they are continuing the pattern, and we have consecutive integers. Let's think about this pattern, 2, 4, 6, 8, right? This is a pattern, and the next number would be 10 in that pattern, right? These are consecutive still, they are still going in a row or in order, but they are only counting the even numbers, right? So these are what we would call consecutive even integers. And then if we continue the pattern here, we have 1, 3, 5, 7, and the next number would be 9, right? So these are what we would call consecutive odd integers. And you're going to see these words in the problems. It'll say something like the sum of 3 consecutive odd integers is bop, 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 okay? And so what are we going to use to solve these problems? Well, we need to think about how consecutive integers are formed, right? So this is a basic kind of concept, but when we put it in algebra, sometimes students get confused. We're going to use the algebra to find a set of consecutive integers. And to do that, we need to think about what the difference is between the consecutive integers. So if we think about two numbers which are consecutive integers, not consecutive odd or even, but just consecutive, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. The difference between each of those is just adding 1. Right? There's 1 added to each one. So 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4, right? So 1 plus 1 gives me 2. Right? 2 plus 1 gives me 3. So we can see how if we add 1 in between our integers, we're getting the next consecutive integer. When we think about odd or even integers, the difference, or how much we change between them, right, would be a little bit greater, right? So 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. And the same is true for odd. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. So when we talk about even or odd integers, the difference is 2, right? We are adding 2. So 2 plus 2 gives me 4. 4 plus 2 gives me 6, right? You can see how adding that two numbers, right, or two digits between them gives me the next one. 1 plus 2 gives me 3. 3 plus 2 gives me 5. Now, that's going to be an important concept when you come to setting up these equations. So let's go through some examples, and I think you'll see why that's important. When we're just talking about consecutive integers, right, remember consecutive would be like 1, 2, 3, right? So the difference between my integers is going to be 1. The sum, which means to add, right? I'm summing or adding up 3 consecutive integers, and I'm saying that they are equal to negative 114, and I need to find these 3 integers. Well, if that is true, I know my first number could be represented with, like with most things in algebra, with the letter x. But then my second number would need to be represented in terms of x. So x is my first number. Well, if x is representing my second number as well, I would have to say it is x plus 1. So x plus 1, right, would give me my second number. And my third number would be represented by that same x, except for it's plus 1 2 times, right? So plus 1 would be x plus 2. All right, so those are my 3 integers, and I've used algebra to set up something that represents them. And I know that they need to be summed. Well, sum means add them up. I'm going to add them up, and I'm going to say that they are equal to negative 114. When I add them up, x plus x plus x, right, is going to give me 3x, because I'm looking for 3 different x's. And 1 plus 2 is going to give me 3, because the difference between the first term, right, and the last term, right, should be that. So we're looking at a simple equation, right, which can be solved by just subtracting 3 and subtracting 3. And we get 3x is equal to negative 114 minus 3. Be careful when you're subtracting negatives, right? So negative 114 minus 3 is going to be negative 117. and then we're dividing by 3. So we get x is equal to negative 117 divided by 3 is negative 39. And so that is the first number. Negative 39 is my first number. Well, what's my next number? Right? It's the next consecutive number. Be careful again with negatives because it's not negative 40, right? We're adding 1, so we're at negative 38, right? If we're going in order, consecutive means going up, right? And following the pattern, negative 39, negative 38, and then negative 37, right? If I add 1 to each of them. So negative 39, negative 38, and negative 37 are my 3 numbers. Well, let's just double check and make sure if I add those up, do I get negative 114? Well, negative 39 plus negative 38 plus negative 37 gives me negative 114. So the sum of those 3 numbers is negative 114. Well, how do we do it when it's even or odd? These ones are going to be exactly the same, okay? Because the difference between even numbers is plus 2, and the difference between odd numbers is plus 2. So they're really no different whether you're setting up at even or odd. So sum of 3 consecutive even integers is 138. So again, my first number is going to be x. My second number is not going to be x plus 1. It's going to be x plus 2, right? Because my next number is adding 2. If this was 2, this would have to be 4. So 2 plus 2 would give me that 4. And then my last one is x plus, again, we're going up by 2, so it's x plus 4. So I've got 3 numbers. What if I had a 4th number? If I had a 4th number, it would be x plus 6, right? If I was trying to figure out the 4 consecutive numbers that added to give me. Or if I were only looking for 2, I would only be using these 2, right? 2 consecutive numbers, I would use those. So now what am I doing? I'm saying I'm adding them up. I'm summing them. It says the sum of these, right, is equal to 138. And so the sum is 3 x's, right? I'm looking for my 3 terms. And then I've got a 2 and a 6, which give me a 2 and a 4, which give me a 6. And so here I'm going to subtract 6 and subtract 6. And I'm going to get 3x equals 138 minus 6 gives me 132. And then I'm going to divide by 3 and divide by 3. Notice I did this in both these problems because I was looking for 3 different numbers, right? 3 consecutive integers, 3 consecutive even integers. This one's going to be the same because I'm looking for 3 consecutive odd integers. I'm still going to have a 3x. All right, so 3x, 132 divided by 3 should give you a 44. And then I need to go back and think about what my numbers are. Well, if my first number was 44, then my next consecutive odd number is 46, right? Because 44 plus 2 gives me 46. And then my next one would be 48, right? Because 44 plus 4 gives me 48. So I found them, 44, 46, and 48. Let's double check them. 44 plus 46 plus 48 gives me 138. Last one, odd. Same problem. First is going to be x. Second is going to be x plus 2, right? Because the difference between odd numbers is still 2. Even though odd and even seem like they would be different, they are not. They are set up exactly the same. I'm looking for 3 numbers that are 2 spaces apart. And so I get this, and I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to let you guys solve this one and pause the video. Okay, so I've set it up basically for you, but I want you to solve it. And take 2 seconds to add those up. You should get a similar problem to the odd and the even. All right, and then get your answer, and I will come back when in just a second and show the answer. All right, so as you can see, the consecutive odd example sets up just like the consecutive even. 3x plus 6 equals that number, right? So minus 6, we get negative 225. Right, and then we divide by 3, and we get negative 75, and so that's our first x, our number, right, negative 75, and the next one is plus 2. Careful with the negatives, right, when you're adding 2, you're not getting negative 77, you're getting negative 73, and then adding 2, you're getting negative 71, right, we're going in order up. So they look backwards, but they're negative numbers, so they should look like that. So those are the 3 consecutive numbers that if you add them together, you get negative 219. On the back side, you have lots of practice in these, okay? So again, I've set it up as kind of consecutive numbers, mild, medium, and spicy. Mild, medium, and spicy. The spicy are pretty spicy, so do not feel bad if you don't want to try some of these. Medium is probably plenty for most of you. But the ones that do have spicy, just for those who want some help in it, right? It's talking about things like quadrilaterals. Well, you just have to remember that quad means 4, right? So it's going to be 4 sides, and you're looking for them as consecutive integers. So it's still kind of just adding, right? You just have to remember that perimeter, right? Perimeter means that you're adding up all the sides. So they've taken the same type of problem, but they've put it in a little bit more difficult vocabulary, right? Quadrilateral is 4 things you're looking for. Perimeter is still adding. It just happens to be written like that. You have to remember that perimeter is the addition of all the sides of something. Okay, so when you get to those, it just makes the vocabulary a little trickier. The math shouldn't be any trickier. So let me know if you have any questions. But again, mild is 1 through 5, medium is 6 through 10, and spicy is 11 through 15. If you need help, raise your hand and I will be around to help. All right.